I want to welcome you to another video drasha. This week's Torah portion is Miketz, and we are continuing with the story of Joseph. Today, as I am recording this video, it is actually the 7th day of Hanukkah. Tonight we'll be lighting the 8th Hanukkah candle. So Hanukkah is approaching its end. And the fact is, when we read this Torah portion on Shabbos, Hanukkah will be over. But as I mentioned in last week's Drasha, there is a connection between the Joseph story and Hanukkah, and we always read a Parsha from the Joseph story during or on Shabbat Hanukkah. And as a matter of fact, this portion, Miketz, is very frequently read on the Sabbath that occurs during Hanukkah. And I spoke about what I saw as a thematic connection between Hanukkah and the Joseph story last week, but I want to continue with this and to say that there is a very strong connection between this week's Torah portion and Hanukkah. And we see that connection in the dreams of Pharaoh. In this week's Parsha, Pharaoh has two dreams. As a matter of fact, it's interesting that there are three pairs of dreams in the Joseph story. Pairs of dreams are what we could call a leitmotif, a recurring theme of the Joseph story, something that kind of unifies the story. First, we had the two dreams of Joseph, and then we had the dream of the butler and the baker in prison, and finally we have the two dreams of Pharaoh. So this is a recurring part of the Joseph story, but these dreams play a very important role in the story because it is as a result of Joseph's interpretation of these dreams that he rises to his great station in Egypt. So what is so striking about these two dreams that Pharaoh has? First, he dreams that there were 7 cows that came out of the Nile, and these cows were healthy and sturdy cows. And then right after them came up 7 cows that were gaunt and ugly. But the gaunt, ugly cows swallowed up the 7 healthy, sturdy cows. Then he has another dream. It's really the same dream. Again, Joseph says that as well. He says, really, the two dreams are the same. The second one involves ears of grain, where a similar thing happens. There are 7 full, healthy, well-formed ears of grain, and then there are 7 ears of grain that are scrawny and ill-formed and scorched by the wind, and the scrawny ears of grain consume the healthy, full ears of grain. So what is so striking about both of these dreams is that it goes against nature. This is why Pharaoh is so disturbed by these dreams. They go against nature. This is not the way things usually happen. The weak don't swallow up the strong. As a matter of fact, it's not only in nature that we see that that's not the way things work, but indeed in human society, in history. The normal course of affairs is not that the weak overcome or prevail over the strong. This is what is so remarkable about these dreams. And isn't this precisely the theme of Hanukkah? In the addition that we say during Hanukkah in the Shemona Esrei, we say, you handed over the strong into the hands of the weak, the many into the hands of the few. That's precisely the theme of Hanukkah. This idea that the weak, the minority, prevailed over the majority, over those who were strong. And of course, this not only has to do with the fact that the Hasmoneans defeated the Syrian army, which obviously was a stronger military force, but also that probably the majority of Jews were in favor of assimilating to Greek culture, and therefore it was a minority of Jews who prevailed in this struggle to preserve Judaism. So that is the miracle of Hanukkah. The miracle of Hanukkah, I think, is not simply that the single cruse of oil burned for 8 days. It's the whole of all of the events are a miracle. The fact that we were able to prevail, that Judaism was able to survive this threat to its existence, that's the miracle of Hanukkah. And again, that is the image that we see in these dreams that Pharaoh has. But isn't this really the story of Jewish history? The fact of the matter is that the Jewish people were exiled from our land some between 1800 and 2000 years ago. We were dispersed over the face of the earth. We have lived in practically every country in the world. And in all of those countries, we have lived as small minorities, surrounded by many pressures to assimilate, and ultimately surrounded also by peoples, by powers that wanted to destroy us. And yet, here we are. That, to me, that's the miracle of Hanukkah, played out in Jewish history. You know, over the centuries, there have been many attempts by various philosophers and thinkers to come up with a proof for the existence of God. Is there some way to demonstrate in a logical fashion that there must be a God? Some kind of proof that would appeal to people, whether they believed in the Bible or not, but simply was a kind of logical proof, and almost like a formula that you could offer to show that there must be a God. And we know that these proofs have generally not been successful or stood the test of time. But I think there is one proof for the existence of God that is a compelling one. And that is, look at the Jews. How else can you explain that a small group of people, dispersed from its land, living all over the world, in many cases, in most cases perhaps, persecuted, expelled, subject to pogroms, subject to all kinds of disabilities, whether it was prohibitions against engaging in many types of occupations, extra taxes that had to be paid, all of these kinds of things that made Jewish life difficult. How do you explain that not only have the Jews survived, but we have flourished? To this very day, we can see Jews are not on the margin of history. We're not the footnotes in a history book, in a history of humanity. Jews have contributed in every age and still continue to contribute in all areas of human endeavor. And it is, of course, amazing that today in the state of Israel, there are Jews from well over 100 countries, that Jews who've lived in places as far-flung as Afghanistan and Iran, Yemen, Ethiopia, Poland, England, the United States, that all these people have come together and still recognize one another as being the same people. That is really the amazing thing. Not simply that each one survived in some way, but how, being dispersed for centuries, did Jews maintain a sense of a unique and unified identity, so that a Jew from Yemen who meets a Jew from Poland says, you know, a landsman, that's a fellow Jew. And Judaism itself has also remained essentially the same religion. Yeah, we know there are lots of differences. Some Jewish communities eat rice on Passover and some don't. Some communities wait 6 hours between meat and milk and some wait 3 hours. There are a large number of these kinds of differences when it comes to minhag, when it comes to custom. But ultimately, the Jewish religion has remained the same. And again, a Jew from Poland and a Jew from Yemen can daven, they can be in the same synagogue, and they recognize one another as Jews, and they recognize what they're doing as being the same Judaism. This is really the amazing thing. And so I would say, how do you explain all this? How do you explain not only the survival of the Jewish people under the most adverse kinds of conditions, but the fact that we have continued to flourish, to be creative and productive, and that we have maintained an identity that links us to other Jews throughout time and throughout the world. And so if you want a proof of God, there it is. Look at the Jewish people. That's the miracle of Hanukkah. Good Shabbos.